So Kamala Harris went on Colbert last night. It was one reject consoling another. It felt like Tim Walz giving himself a pep talk in the ladies' room mirror. It was Kamala's first interview since her brutal election loss. But I wonder, is she there to sell a book?
I talk about it in the book. What I talk about in the book. So this book, I talk about in the book. I hope by writing this book.
What happens when a king forgets what made him king? What happens when the sharpest, most celebrated court jester in the kingdom stops telling jokes and starts delivering sermons, all while demanding the same thunderous applause? For over a decade, Stephen Colbert was not just a host, he was a cultural institution, the undisputed king of late-night comedy, who built a formidable empire on the foundation of being the smartest, quickest, and most devastatingly funny man in any room he chose to enter. But all empires, no matter how grand, are subject to the laws of decay, and sometimes they aren't brought down by a rival army storming the gates, but by a slow, creeping rot from within. This is the story of how the King of Smug didn't just lose his crown, but seemed to forget he was ever wearing one. It's a story of a slow, cringe-inducing fade into irrelevance, and how the throne was ultimately seized by the one person the entire media establishment was trained to ignore.
Beat all these guys, my show, and we're only in 61 million homes. CBS reaches nearly 300 million Americans. They don't talk about that. He also had 200 staffers. I employ nothing but teenage runaways. And by the way, I don't even pay them. Ha! Anyway, I love how they claimed it's a financial reason, but everything is a financial reason. Right? If you open up a restaurant, you serve lousy food, people stop coming, you close it. You don't say because the food sucked. You said, well, it was a financial reason.
To truly understand the depth of the fall, you have to remember the dizzying height of his ascent. On Comedy Central's The Colbert Report, he wasn't just a comedian, he was a cultural phenomenon performing a high-wire act 5 nights a week. His character, a narcissistic, right-wing blowhard pundit, was a masterwork of satire. He perfected the art of truthiness, a term he coined that entered the dictionary and perfectly captured the political era. He held up a funhouse mirror to the absurdity of partisan media, and the reflection was so precise, so painfully accurate, that it was often indistinguishable from the real thing. Segments like The Word were miniature masterpieces of comedic deconstruction, while Better Know a District saw him sit face to face with actual politicians, who often couldn't tell if they were in on the joke or if they were the joke. He was dangerous, he was unpredictable, and he was brilliantly gut-wrenchingly funny. He was everything late night was supposed to be, a necessary, fearless check on power, wrapped in entertainment, so compelling it made you think long after you stopped laughing.
Take your power away. It's the whole reason you're sitting in that crappy chair and Trump is relieving himself in a toilet made of gold. But the interview is amazing for giving you a glimpse of an alternate universe where misery is redefined as joyful and the winner is still a monster. In the extended interview posted online, Colbert longed for better days before Trump kicked her ass. Because less than a year ago, things were very joyful.
Just less than a year ago, things were very joyful. There was actually a lot of hope associated with your campaign. And there was a
Then came the promotion that would become a slow-motion creative execution. When CBS handed him the keys to The Late Show, the crown jewel of network television, once polished by the legendary David Letterman, the world watched with bated breath. This was his coronation, but to ascend to that throne, he had to make a fatal choice. He had to kill his character. The mask came off, and without the brilliant artifice of the pundit to hide behind, the real Stephen Colbert stepped into the spotlight, and slowly, night by night, the magic began to leak out of the room. The biting surgical irony was replaced with sincere, often preachy, political pronouncements. The man who once brilliantly parodied the self-important media figure was now becoming one, right before our eyes. His old shtick of being the smart guy in the room was no longer a joke, it was just his default setting. The transformation was like watching a wild wolf get domesticated, its teeth filed down and its howl replaced by a polite, predictable bark. He became a human teleprompter for the Democratic National Committee, his jokes so perfectly aligned with one side of the aisle that they felt less like comedy and more like press releases with a laugh track.
Last night, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, John Oliver, and Jon Stewart showed their support for Stephen Colbert by appearing on his show. It's the most laughs network TV had since they showed Sophie's Choice with limited commercial interruption. Since Colbert's firing, Jon Stewart told CBS to go F yourself, and Colbert told Trump to go F yourself. Wow, $100 million worth of writers must really have paid off. So, Joe, I couldn't help but notice Kamala's face when Colbert was talking about how joyful it was. She looked at him like he was insane.
Yeah. He was. By the way, congrats on Fallon. I don't mean to one-up you, but I'm in talks with the people at the mic, Doug.
This is where a new, insidious form of entertainment was not just practiced, but perfected Claptor. It's the hollow sound an audience makes when they're not reacting to a joke with spontaneous laughter, but are instead consciously applauding a political statement they agree with. Colbert's monologues transformed into Claptor harvesting operations. They were no longer built on the architecture of a good joke, setup, punchline, surprise, but on the predictable cadence of a political rally. He would deliver a focus group tested talking point, pause for the inevitable applause, and then offer a self-satisfied smirk to the camera. His show stopped being a comedy club and became a safe space, a nightly meeting for people who wanted to be told their opinions were not just correct, but morally superior. Calling it comedy was like calling a microwave gourmet. Sure, it heated things up, but the result was a bland, rubbery, and deeply unsatisfying product. His audience morphed from a collection of individuals into a single entity, a human laugh track, a sea of bobbleheads trained to respond to smugness like Pavlov's dog with a sociology degree.
Yesterday, New York Governor Kathy Hochul declared a state of emergency in NYC due to severe flooding. Still not sure if it was caused by the rain or this man's tears. Reason, right? If you open up a restaurant, you serve lousy food, people stop coming, you close it, you don't say because the food sucked. You said, well, it was a financial reason. But they didn't just they didn't cancel his show. They canceled the whole show.
Yeah.
This was a quote institution, and they said rather than put somebody in his place, but they never get that the free market means exactly that. Free to fire someone who's stinking up a market. Like they took a dump in the produce section. That show, his show, was like the dope who maxes out his credit card because he thinks the stripper really likes him. Ooh, you got 2 jokes for the price of 1. But that's not fascism, that's math. But for the left, math is what happens to other.
While Colbert was busy polishing his own halo under the studio lights, an unlikely challenger was sharpening his daggers in the shadows. Greg Gutfeld wasn't supposed to be a threat. He was on a news network, a place where comedy traditionally went to die. He had a fraction of Colbert's budget. A smaller staff, he joked, was made up of teenage runaways, and a set that looked like a political science major had designed a game show. But Gutfeld had a weapon that Colbert had long since abandoned: authenticity. His show was raw, unfiltered, and unapologetically contrarian. He positioned himself as the comedic antidote to the suffocating sanctimony that had taken over late night. He began saying the things millions of people were thinking but had been told were unacceptable. His show felt like a rebellion, not because it was loud, but because it was honest. He was torching the entire illusion of late-night comedy one brutal joke at a time, and people, hungry for something real, started to notice in massive numbers.
Predictable outrage ensued with demands that Colbert be fired. 2 days later, he responded.
If you saw my monologue on Monday, you know that I was a little upset with Donald Trump for insulting a friend of mine. So, at the end of that monologue, I had a few choice insults for the president in return. I don't regret that. So while I would do it again, I would change a few words that were cruder than they needed to be.
So he didn't regret the joke, only the language. Again, I don't care. It's jokes.
The cracks in Colbert's ivory tower became a gaping chasm during one spectacularly awkward, revealing interview. He had Kamala Harris on as a guest not long after her brutal election loss. In a moment of what can only be described as reality-bending sycophancy, Colbert attempted to console her. He looked her in the eye, his own face beaming with earnestness, and said, just less than a year ago, things were very joyful. The camera, perhaps mercifully, cut to Harris. Her face was a perfect mask of confusion, a slight tilt of the head and a flicker in her eyes that screamed, what on earth is this man talking about? It was a glimpse into the hermetically sealed bubble bubble Colbert now inhabited. It was a universe where failure is redefined as joy, and where inconvenient truths are simply ignored. The moment the curtain was pulled back, it revealed a man no longer observing the world, but performing for his own echo chamber, so deep inside the fantasy that even his powerful guests couldn't play along.
Listen, I think that my show exists is because of the arrogance and the ego and the assumptions that the liberals have who turned comedy sideways. You know, people find my show entertaining because I'm saying things that they're thinking that they thought they couldn't say because everybody else has made it so suffocating. I also have, like, I take issue with the biggest lie you're seeing here, which is that, you know, Colbert or Kimmel were somehow risk takers. They've had very long, rewarding, lucrative careers doing exactly what was expected from them. Just so happens the audience found an alternate.
As his cultural influence waned, Colbert's claims of being a brave, rebellious truth-teller grew louder and more absurd. He famously delivered a monologue laced with a few choice, crude insults for the president, which sparked predictable, manufactured outrage. But his response to the backlash was far more revealing than the initial joke. He went on air and delivered a masterclass in the non-apology apology. "I don't regret that," he declared, before adding, "I would change a few words that were crudder than they needed to be." He wasn't sorry for the punch, only for how hard it landed. It was the ultimate performance of rebellion without any of the risk. Gutfeld and his growing legion of fans saw right through it. This wasn't a comedian taking a risk. This was a highly paid corporate employee doing exactly what was expected of him by his target demographic. His rebellion was a theme park ride. It felt dangerous for a moment, but it was perfectly safe, meticulously designed to never go off the rails and upset the people who truly held power.
I mean, imagine being a chef, you know, you're such a bad chef that they cancel food. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I guess he's less popular than Shingles, but you get this, you get this, it's so obvious. You can't do a comedy show and a sermon at the same time. Your job is to say something funny, not being the show that says, "That's not funny," about all the things that are just too grim to talk about. I'm old enough to remember when they used to say, that TV critics used to say that the right can't be funny. Well, guess what? You know what kills your funny bone? But are we on the precipice of entering a censorship state?
We are on the precipice of entering a censorship state in which Donald Trump is using the powers of the federal government in order to erase criticism from the airwaves. Stephen Colbert didn't get thrown off the air because he wasn't doing well.
Why is he doing that on the toilet?
The establishment, seeing one of their own flailing and taking on water, began to panic. In a move that reeked of desperation, the other kings of the old guard, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, John Oliver, and even their revered mentor, Jon Stewart, all appeared on Colbert's show in a grand show of solidarity. It was the late-night Avengers assembling to defend their crumbling kingdom, but instead of projecting strength, it projected fear. It looked less like a group of friends supporting a colleague, and more like a cartel protecting its territory. They weren't defending the art of comedy, they were defending a business model that was rapidly becoming obsolete. It was a clear, desperate signal that they knew the game was changing. An outsider was rewriting the rules, and they were terrified because they had forgotten how to play. Ultimately, the debate over who was funnier, who was more relevant, wasn't settled by critics or by fellow comedians in a circle of self-congratulation. It was settled by the people, by the silent, anonymous jury of millions holding remote controls. As Gutfeld himself so bluntly put it, his victory wasn't fascism, it was math. The ratings were the receipts. The scrappy underdog on the news channel was consistently, decisively beating the polished titan of CBS. The free market, in its cold, brutal efficiency, had made its choice. You simply cannot serve a sermon and call it a comedy show. You cannot take a dump in the produce section and wonder why people stop shopping at your store. The final crushing irony of Stephen Colbert's career is that he became a perfect parody of himself. He went from brilliantly mocking a self-important partisan pundit to becoming the real thing, only far less charming and infinitely more insufferable. Gutfeld didn't just win a ratings battle, he exposed a fraud, and in doing so, he may have signaled the end of an entire era of late-night comedy.